the series of tweets. Throw these tweets up here, Joe. This is Senator Jim Hendren, and this is what he tweeted out. I wanted to talk about it. He said, here's a link to the legislation that creates the Arkansas Tax Reform and Relief Task Force, okay? And this is tweet 1 of 7. Tweet 2 of 7 reads, we have two purposes. 1, reform our tax code by simplifying and modernizing. 2, as title says, determine best method to cut taxes, relief, that will be fair and make us more competitive. Tweet 3 of 7 reads, Arkansas has the third highest sales tax relative to personal income in the country, primarily because special interests have successfully carved out over $1 billion in sales tax exemptions. That is a fact. 4 of 7. Anyone who says that the task force's purpose is to raise taxes is being intellectually dishonest. I expect good policy debate about justification of exemptions, but hopefully we can avoid straw man arguments about tax increases. All right, now stop. This, to me, should make everyone hold on to their wallets a little tighter. And the only reason I say that is because the establishment's MO, and Jim Hendren is the establishment, is to come. I mean, it's almost the more forceful they come out against, forceful they come out for a specific policy, there's always something else going on in the background. So it makes me kind of nervous. But again, I want to eat crow so bad, folks, you have no idea. I want to eat crow so bad because that means government would have gotten smaller and we would be more competitive when we would be less taxed. I mean, we are taxed less is what I'm trying to say. We would have some good things going on. I'm just very skeptical because these tax farces are not a good way to govern. They are a way to whittle down legislators who are more easily controlled. I'm sorry. I mean, for some of you on that task force, you might want to ask yourself, did I get put on this task force because they think they can control me? Now, not all of you. I'm just saying you might want to consider that being a possibility. I mean, it's for your own good to consider that. You should be considering that every morning when you wake up. Especially if you're in politics, is am I being manipulated? I mean, if you don't have those thoughts, you need to look around where you're at, okay? So he says, if you're going to talk about raising taxes, that we're being intellectually dishonest. I think we have good reason to be skeptical of them raising taxes. Because if the government, they don't like this argument, but if the government ends up getting more money than they are getting now, that would be a tax increase. Can we agree on that definition? If the government ends up getting more money than they're getting now, that would be a tax increase. That would mean you didn't cut taxes enough other places. I don't think that's being intellectually dishonest. Now, maybe you do. I am just trying to warn because I've been down this path before. And just because you say a bill says one thing, we've been over this, it actually accomplishes the complete opposite. And in this case, Senator Hendren has a clear record of saying that his bill would have ended Medicaid expansion in 2015. And by the way, somebody give me a call if it has ended yet. He said it over and over again. Very upset, very defensive when people called out and read the bill and said, you're not ending the program. Right? So we have, cue up this audio. Here's Governor Asa Hutchinson back when they were trying to cut military retirement tax, the military retirement income tax. So if you're retired military, it was going to cost us $13 million to just absorb the tax cut, right? $13 million. And the governor said this. No, it's fine.
Please note that the other conservative and responsible approach was when it came to providing the tax cuts that's still going through the system for the military retirees, that we wanted to make sure that was paid for. So we didn't say, well, we're just going to absorb that. We have to pay for it. We have to close off exemptions. And so there are many that, not many,
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hey, folks, welcome. Thanks so much for being with us. Good morning to you. This is the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. And we are successfully annoying progressives daily. And if you want to contribute to that process, you can give us a phone call or a text message. Sound off on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Conduit News. The telephone number is 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. And we really appreciate you guys being with us. You make this program possible. The fact that you are listening to this program, just the fact that you're listening to it, you have no idea how it haunts the progressive Republicans in this state and as well the Democrats. Here's the thing about this. I got a text message that I missed in the middle of the show yesterday, and I can't remember specifically what we were going over. Oh, I know what it was. We were going over this letter. That was addressed from the governor, Asa Hutchinson, and it was addressed personally to me, Dear Mr. Harrell. And he goes over a lot of his talking points for the campaign and talks about it on the back. We didn't really even get to the back of this, by the way. Anyway, the text message that I got said that Democrats are not protesting the policies of Asa. And for the most part, that is true. I mean, if we were to sit down and really try to hash it out and ask, what policies has Asa enacted that has sent the left into a tailspin freakout? If we were really changing things, then you would have John Brumman and Max Brantley writing really, really negative articles, and they're not for the most part. Now, the Planned Parenthood thing, that's good. Asa did a good job when he defunded Planned Parenthood of the Heartland here in Arkansas. That was a very good thing, and I have said so many times. Because now the reason he did it is because it was obviously something that needed to happen because we had the undercover videos of them selling baby body parts, and anybody that looks at that is going to say, "Oh my goodness!" I mean, if you get right down to it, yes, it's been a genocide that's been going on since 1974. Yeah, that's what's been happening: illegal sanctioned genocide of the unborn. 50, 60 million babies, human beings. But it was a good thing that he defunded Planned Parenthood of the Heartland, right? So they kind of, but you could even get some Democrats to agree with that. Quite frankly, I mean, not even all Democrats in Arkansas melted down over that, right? But so aside from that, what other issue are they really in disagreement with the governor on? I mean, is it tax cuts? I mean, in the last session, you had Democrats that were supportive of the governor's tax cut, that $50 million one, because it was for people who don't pay taxes. I mean, it was for the people on the bottom rung of the socioeconomic scale. which was actually criticized by people like me on the right because you're cutting taxes on people that are not paying any taxes, and tax cuts are actually supposed to help business owners and job creators invest more in their businesses and hire more people and create more jobs because it's the people of Arkansas that create jobs. Okay? I mean, I guess you could say on principle the Democrats would say we don't want any tax cuts, but they certainly would approve of his spending. And I'll just cite you. You had was it Senator Joyce Elliott, or was it Senator Flowers? I can't remember, but I think it was Joyce Elliott. They were standing up when they had the pre-budgetary hearings at the beginning of this year, the pre-budget hearings for the fiscal session. And you had people, conservatives on the committee, trying to actually propose cuts of what the governor wanted, the governor's budget. The Democrats stood up for Governor Asa Hutchinson's budget that was increasing spending everywhere, that was giving spending authority, increasing spending authority more than the state agencies were even asking for in many cases. And so the Democrats are totally fine with the level of spending. And that this is a point that is lost, I think, on many when you really take a look at the situation. Nationally, Democrats are against everything that Republicans are trying to do, and nationally, Republicans are against everything Democrats are trying to do. And we are supposed to believe that all of a sudden those issues don't matter as much when you get here to Arkansas. I mean, it goes like the other side of this coin that we're talking about is the fact that the mainstream media in this country cannot say one good or positive thing or just report the facts about what Donald Trump is doing. Okay, they are stacked against him. There are polls now that show this, that the American people believe that that's true, that the media is completely stacked against Donald Trump. They can't say anything positive. It is all negative, the mainstream press. But somehow that's not true here in Arkansas. We have the Republican establishment that is actually supported by the mainstream media apparatus here in the state. So that's strange too. But it's the other side of the coin is that Democrats are, by and large, they feel like they've hit the lottery of a Republican governor. I mean, if you gave them an option, what if they had to have a Republican governor, don't you know they would pick Asa as that guy because they're still getting what they want, and it's not policies that are actually on the right flank. These policies are not right flank policies. These policies are at best middle of the road, but I would contend, and I think we could certainly especially if you just look at the healthcare situation with how we have big business and big government colluding to put pharmacies out of business or take over the plant board or whatever. But especially if you look at that, I mean, or with healthcare, go and listen to what Ronald Reagan said about socialized medicine and how the Republicans are doing exactly what Ronald Reagan warned them not to do. Establishment Republicans are. Anyway, that's an interesting text that we got yesterday while we were going over this letter that is, again, personally addressed to me. Dear Mr. Harrell, I'm glad that Governor took the time. And, of course, this was a fundraising letter, so he was asking for money, asking for me to donate money to his campaign. Me personally, can you believe that? I mean, it says Mr. Harrell on here, so he was personally asking me to donate. It's even signed by him. Look, I mean, and it's in blue ink. Look at that. He signed it in blue ink. That means that's a real pen right there. That's a real pen. I mean, I'm flattered he took the time. You say what, Joe?
It was a real pen, but then it was printed.
Joe says it was a real pen, but then it was printed. So you're telling me he didn't personally sign this? Well, that's kind of fraudulent. That makes me that hurts my feelings. I thought he personally took the time to actually mend fences and try to get me to support him. But it's not. You're saying that's not true?
Do that for peasants.
That's sad.
Why does the king ever
I'm actually hurt now. I had no idea. Up until this point, I just feel like the ignorance is bliss. You know, I was actually having a good morning until I realized you're telling me that that's not a real signature, huh? That's very sad. I'm very disappointed now.
When does the king ever consider the common folk?
I don't know. I don't know if I can go on now knowing that this isn't. I thought this was a personal letter, and it's not a personal letter. You're saying it's just he. Oh, all right. Well, never mind then. When does the king consider the common folk? Is that what you said? I don't know. I think when they're at his when the mob's at his doorstep. I mean, that would be when they consider them. And if you look at what the pharmacists did, for example, and the huge showing of pharmacists down there saying this is a problem, and how they actually, decided to regulate PBMs, which, by the way, is a product of the socialized health care that is being supported right now here in this state. Because, I'm a conservative, and I'm saying, yeah, you got to regulate them. And why am I saying you got to? I'm not for regulations, and yet you got to regulate this because socialism and government collusion with big insurance companies brought us to this point, and now we're screaming for regulation, which is the entire point of this whole system. By the way, it's very sad. Folks, I want you to text the program at 870-275-9799, or you can sound off on Facebook. That would be facebook.com/Conduit News. When speaking of pharmacists or dentists or farmers who are upset, let's explore something else when we come back. Let's explore the timber industry, specifically sawmills, when we return. And you guessed it, they're having a hard time because of China. We'll be back in just a moment.
This is ASA News, The Parrot. With breaking news from the Capitol in Little Rock. I'm Bob Baloney. There are reports circling around from politicians who are in the know, and the same phrase keeps being used. That phrase is new revenue generation. Let's go to our reporter on the ground from the Capitol, Haley Hogwash. Haley?
Thanks, Bob. Yes, it seems the more politicians I talk to, the more I hear the phrase new revenue generation. We're trying to figure out exactly what that means, but you can rest assured it will be good for the people of Arkansas.
Haley, it certainly sounds like something good. I like how the phrase uses the word generation. That makes me think this has got to be doing something positive for our children in the future. Haley?
Yes, Bob, some new developments. I've just been speaking to some people who are here and are not politicians, and they tell me the phrase new revenue generation is actually code for a new tax.
Oh, my. Well, if this is true, Haley, that would add to a growing list of new taxes that have barely made any headlines at all, so it's best not to discuss them here on ASA News, The Parrot.
Yes, Bob, I know it's sure to make government officials angry that their phrasing of the new revenue generation has been changed by the people and called a tax increase.
I would expect an announcement from Mother Government soon to set the record straight. What is the new tax? Revenue generation, Haley?
Well, this new tax, a new revenue generation would add to a growing list. First, there was a revenue generation on movies, books, and songs that people download using the internet. And next, there was the tax increase. I'm sorry, Bob, the new revenue generation on all purchases made using the internet. And now I'm told this new revenue generation is a tax on the people's patience.
I realize the people don't like it, Haley, but specifically, what is the new tax? I mean, revenue generation.
No, Bob, I'm telling you, according to the activists here at the Capitol who have gathered and are listening to some radio broadcast, the revenue generation is literally taxing the patience of the people of Arkansas. I'm told the less patience you have with the government
better not tax our patience.
The more they will tax your patience and the more money you will owe at a later date. I'm also told the collection method on taxing your patience will be decided in a newly formed multicolored ribbon task force.
How taxing.
PHP parody. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
So I think in order for that to work, you would have to have accompanying legislation, like a patience odometer. You have like a patience odometer that maybe like works in reverse, and so the government somehow would know when you are out of patience. Because the less you have, the more you would be taxed. The more money you would owe, but you would need some way to measure it.
Well, the thing is, so here's the thing about that.
Mm-hmm.
If it's exponential in terms of percentage change, so let's say you have a lot of patients and you're only taxed 1%. But when you're out of patients, you're taxed 100%, which means they take everything you have.
That's good. That's a nightmare scenario if they really do have plans to tax our patients. That was an interesting report from ASA News. Interestingly enough, on the odometer thing, I want to remind you that it was Matt Pitch, State Representative Matt Pitch, who actually proposed a bill that would have created an experimental program where people would voluntarily let the government somehow or another view their odometers every year and use the miles traveled to assess the individual for how much they owe, how much they owe in taxes based on how much they've actually driven on the roads. And the reason they were doing this, the reason State Representative Matt Pitch did this, and then, of course, he withdrew the bill because there was so much public outrage, is because they were attempting to squeeze the taxpayers for, as much as they could. They wanted every dime out of us, and this was viewed as a way that where technology could more efficiently tax the people. And the reason I was outraged by it at the time, and everyone else should have been, because they said, "Oh, it was just for electric cars." Okay, yeah, it's just for electric cars now, bozo. Do you not know how government works? It's just for electric cars. Yeah, now it is. But I was outraged because I thought we had elected Republicans who were going to come up with creative ideas about how to lower taxes, not come up with new ideas about how to tax us more. It was maddening, and it still is. I'm glad that State Representative Matt Pitch, when he sponsored that bill, ended up not running it. It did end up passing a committee, but then after it got out of committee, everybody found out what it was. This was back in 2015 this happened. You can go look it up. All right, some of our comments on Facebook. Facebook.com/Conduit News. Let's see here. We have Gary writing, "Clearly Democrats are winning. Look at our Republican majority." Nice. That's an interesting comment. And this kind of goes with what we were talking about. If the Democrats are pretty much on board. I mean, I think they would. Look, with any of this, there's a lot of unspoken because they feel like they have to play red T-shirt versus blue T-shirt all the time. And they still try to keep up this theatrical, facade. They don't want to break the fourth wall of the proscenium too much. But every now and then they're just playing. They're just acting blue T-shirt, red T-shirt. There's a lot of blue T-shirts that are totally fine with what the, quote, red T-shirts are doing right now. All right, so let's go to this. China, and let's go to the timber real quick, okay? China's high-quality log buying is growing. Now, this is out of Troy, Tennessee, but I'm telling you, we've been talking with, and maybe we'll get more on this later in the week, but I wanted to cover this now because, again, if you just look at the list behind me, we've got a lot of people, this affluent voter group behind me here. We have people who are, becoming aware that things are not quite right. Things are not really going the way. The reforms that we want when you switch from voting for Democrats to Republicans have just not been enacted. We've got more excuses than anything. But anyway, this is interesting just in terms of what China is doing to the sawmill industry. Now, specifically, I found this article. This is woodworkingnetwork.com. And that Chinese buyers are buying more logs directly from log exporters, bypassing U.S. sawmills. According to Gerald Story, the Story Sawmill and Lumber Company, the log exporters are buying better quality material, and they are paying well above normal market prices for the logs. Story Sawmill in Troy, Tennessee, is in the hardwood sawmill and lumber business and works primarily in red oak and poplar. Gerald Story has talked to other sawmills in the area. All the sawmills his company competes with are experiencing the same thing. Story said this Chinese buying started a few years ago, slowed down a bit, and now has picked up again, big time. Quote, the Chinese are subsidizing their companies to the extent that U.S. sawmills can't compete for the timber and logs in our area. The Chinese are also illegally receiving logs not fumigated into their country to cut their cost. U.S. log exporters are going to force U.S. sawmills out of business. Earlier, exports of red oak were reported to have risen dramatically, according to global woodmakers or global markets. Now, is that an ad or is that embedded? Yeah, okay, no, it's not an ad. With 55 million cubic feet of logs exported, exports of red oak rose 64% over the last year, representing 29% of the U.S. total log export at nearly 16 million cubic feet through 3 quarters of 2017. China remains the top recipient of U.S. hardwood logs, boosting its imports by 19%. So what's going on here? I mean, what really is going on here in terms of what they're doing to American companies? And if this obviously is an article out of Tennessee, but I promise you it's affecting the industry here in Arkansas as well. I mean, the timber industry down south is huge. Some of the tallest trees, I really didn't. It wasn't until a couple of years ago that I went down to South Arkansas, and I was driving, and I'm telling you, it was beautiful. Some of the tallest trees I think I've ever seen. And I was on a little 2-lane road, and it was just absolutely gorgeous. But anyway, it's a big deal. It's happening here as well. And throw this other article up there real quick. I know we're up against a hard break, but if you want to know more about China and what they're doing, I want to reference you to this Arkansas, this Conduit for Action article. You can go look it up right now. The headline, Arkansas Economic Plan, Jobs from China, Destroyer of Churches. Go check this article out because this is just kind of another leg about, well, what is Arkansas doing right now? Arkansas can't give money to China fast enough so that they'll come here and maybe create 10 jobs in the next 100 years or whatever, And then of course we can't even agree on what the definition of a newly created job is. They want you to think that all this taxpayer money going to Chinese companies from the Shandong province are going to employ people who are right now just sitting on their couch doing nothing. The reality is most of the people that will work at these new places are already working somewhere else. That's not a new job then if they just go from one place to another.
there were some that were saying, we don't like to have those offsets. We don't like to have a paid for. We just want to absorb that into our budget. That's not a conservative, responsible approach, and we took that approach. I feel very comfortable with it. And,
Stop. So what the governor is saying there, this was back when they were trying to offset the military retirement tax cut plan. He's saying that to just absorb it or to make cuts elsewhere is not conservative. He says it's not conservative. Now, again, very disconcerting or very concerning to me, because you have Asa defining what conservatism is, and the way he's defining it is actually liberalism. That's very concerning to me. We've been over this before. But so I think we could say the governor has an aversion, okay, to cutting spending so that we can have tax cuts. And I'm just going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say that the task force is going to do whatever the governor wants. Call me crazy. I just think it being chaired by Senator Jim Hendren, the governor's nephew, I have a feeling that there's meetings taking place and there's going to be some sort of plan that the governor is. Let me just say this: can you imagine if they came out and the governor was opposed, like legitimately opposed to what they were doing? I don't think that's going to happen, and I think he'd have to be born, yesterday. I mean, it just is what it is. Now, fast forward to today. That was last year. This is this year, and we now know that military retirement tax cut was actually a tax increase, because while they did give our brave men and women who have served long enough to retire in the military a tax break on their income taxes here in Arkansas, they raised taxes on digital downloads, they raised taxes on candy and soda, and when it's all said and done, the government actually got more money at the end of the day than they did before. It didn't actually offset. It wasn't even an offset. It wasn't neutral. They ended up getting more money. And Senator Hendren says, no, we didn't get more money. We took that extra $8 million and we transferred it into a Medicaid trust fund, as if because they got the money and immediately spent it or shifted it somewhere else, it's not a tax increase. It's very strange, but it just shows you how defensive they are. And by the way, that data comes from the Bureau of Legislative Research. And I know you want to twist. In committee, they like to, especially after this program airs, they like to go to committee and then they like to twist Department of Finance and Administration officials' arms to get them to just publicly agree with them. There are more people that listen to this radio program, though, than are in their little committee room, even if it is in the MAC building with no cameras, so nobody can know what's.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Real quick, let's revisit this, because it just drives the political establishment nuts when we bring this up. It drives them absolutely nuts. And so let's continue doing it. I mean, let's actually think about who we are doing business with. Shall we? Let's actually think about it. A January 26th article from Conduit for Action, headline, Arkansas Economic Plan, Jobs from China, in parenthesis, Destroyer of Churches. Now, this is something that at least needs to be discussed, okay? Because it really irks me when you think about it. Really does. Look, and I know the United States has relations, with other countries and everything that don't necessarily have great human rights records. I get that. I know some of that's part of diplomacy, right? I know, but we're not talking about the United States foreign policy. In a way, we're talking about Arkansas's foreign policy, and that would be trying to recruit Chinese businesses to come in here, and the governor, Asa Hutchinson, wants to give away our money to make them to allow him to do it. Now, speaking of Asa, did anybody see Jan Morgan on the front page of Arkansas Online this morning? Is she? I don't know. Is she on the front page of the actual paper? Let me see here. So somebody text me a photo too. Hang on, real quick. Let me see what this says. Is it on the front page? I don't know if it's on the front page. If it is, it's below the fold. Yeah, it doesn't appear to be. Although maybe it is. Yeah, maybe it is. Maybe it was. Okay. Anyway, we'll be covering that at 7:30. That article is fantastic, by the way. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Jan Morgan was interviewed by Michael Wickline at the Capitol Bistro, which is just right off. It's like right in the right off the Capitol grounds there, the Marble Palace grounds, and it's right close to the TV stations and everything else. And so anyway, the governor just happened to walk in while this was going. Interesting exchange. We'll talk about that at 7:33. High Arkansas taxes have consequences. According to the Tax Foundation, Arkansas is one of the higher tax states in the nation. Arkansas's high taxes make it difficult to attract new businesses. This means Arkansas must rely on incentives, giving away money to attract businesses, and we pay the bill. The big economic news in 2017 was Governor Asa Hutchinson's trips to China and announcements that, thanks to financial incentives you pay for, Chinese businesses will open manufacturing plants in Arkansas. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is Arkansas's plan. When the governor came out and attacked Conduit News the other day, 2 weeks ago now, when he came out and attacked Conduit News several times, he talked about the economy and how Conduit News is opposed to everything he's trying to do in the state. When he says everything, he means this. This really upsets him because, you see, in his mind, he has worked really hard to go on these trips to China to get this, and he's really worked hard to get the headline. You see, the first thing that his taxpayer money buys him, even when he takes the trip, are positive headlines and good publicity back home. Governor trying to get jobs by going to China. Now, does that make sense to anybody? I mean, when you really think about it, how's going to China going to bring us jobs? Well, see, this just irritates the fire out of them that we're even bringing this up to you. But this is this is his strategy. His strategy is to go to China and bring jobs back after the visit. And it's just, the big economic news, incentives, manufacturing plants in Arkansas. With Arkansas's high taxes and Governor Asa Hutchinson supporting more taxes, which he has, gas tax increase, he supported the internet sales tax increase, the digital downloads tax, which now made the military tax cut ceases to be revenue neutral. So he is supporting more taxes, just so you know, and he supported and passed the tire tax increase, and that bill also created a new separate tax on tires as well. With Arkansas's high taxes and Governor Asa Hutchinson supporting more taxes, apparently Arkansas's current best hope for adding jobs in Arkansas is to give away your tax money as incentives to businesses from China. Here is what the best hope looks like. The Chinese government recently destroyed the Golden Lampstand Church, which was a Christian church reportedly having 50,000 members. The destruction of the church is not an isolated event. For example, in late December, the Chinese destroyed a Catholic church in the same province. Here's one of the many videos showing Arkansas's best hope destroying the Golden Lampstand Church, and a video there's from the Garden. You can click on it if you want. Now, what's the other thing? What's the proposed, like, what's the solution, I guess? Instead of relying on businesses from places that destroy churches and persecute Christians, Arkansas needs to reduce taxes to make it an attractive place for American businesses to locate. Now, is that so hard? Isn't that a simple solution? For Arkansas business to grow in a better place for people to work and live, you just got to cut taxes. You could start by just eliminating the corporate income tax here in Arkansas. Instead of giving away incentives, save that money that's coming in And instead of giving away incentives, why not just take the wash? Because that kind of is a wash. If you look at the revenue that comes in from corporate income tax every year versus how much we're giving in incentives, you could just say eliminate corporate income tax and we're going to stop the incentives. And now every business in Arkansas is treated the same. And instead, and we get away from this winners and losers and this monarch of deciding who gets to have a business. See, in China, that's how it works, by the way. People say, China is communist. Okay, some people say, no, Paul, they're capitalists. Well, okay, capitalism is an economic system. Communism is a form of government, and and really and truly, if you know what China is and what it's become, this is China. Okay, this is how you start a business in China. Okay, you're told that you're allowed to do that. You're told that you're allowed to have one. That's how it works. You get a business. Nope, not wrong family. You get a business. I mean, I'm just telling you like it is. Now it may be different. It might be slightly different than it was, 10 years ago. There may be more. I have no idea, actually. I mean, in terms of opportunity, but you can't imagine if we're talking about, communists. That's just, there's no room for that. Okay, that doesn't exist. I don't think we realize how that there are, as much as we have technology, there are governments still today that really just stand in complete contrast to what we have, and ours is slipping away. We're watching it happen. All right, so Arkansas is still on the path of maintaining high taxes and or even increasing them. For example, Hutchinson insisted the tax relief for military retirement pay be funded by imposing other taxes on Arkansans. Then he went even farther, used the bill as an excuse to raise millions more, and used the legislation as an excuse to send another $9 million to shore up Medicaid and his Obamacare Medicaid expansion. Governor Hutchinson still wants to impose an internet sales tax and more taxes on gasoline and diesel fuel. Meanwhile, Arkansas legislators continue to collect pay for attending Little Rock meetings on the Tax Reform and Relief Legislative Task Force. But the task force is not focused on reducing the overall tax burden in Arkansas. Now, if that is wrong, I know it'll be corrected, but we're not going to know, right? Because what is the overall tax burden? How would you reduce the overall? Again, this is back to what we were talking about yesterday, and I know we're playing it from the Paul from the past thing. This is back. We've got to be able to agree on what the definition of words and phrases are. The overall tax burden, in order for the overall tax burden to be reduced in Arkansas, the government must have less money than it has now. Meaning we are sending less of our money to do the job of government than we're sending now. That is the only way your tax burdens are reduced. If you just raise taxes here and cut taxes there in an attempt to make it revenue neutral, then the tax burden is still the same. By the way, I think that, Joe, I really do think they want to raise the food tax, the grocery tax. You know how it's been reduced over the years. I do think that they want to put that sales tax back on food. And they say, well, we're going to cut your taxes elsewhere. Well, is it going to be revenue neutral? If it's revenue neutral, then it is not a tax cut. Period. And if we can't afford it. Well, you can if you quit spending so much. If you quit increasing the budget year over year about $200 million. High taxes and giving tax dollars away to attract businesses from a country that is the destroyer of churches. Arkansas's high taxes have consequences. Tax and spend politicians are counting on you to let them stay in office and continue high taxes. Anyway, it is a contrast. This economic plan of the governors, I mean, do I hope? Let me just say this: do I hope it works? Like, do I hope it creates jobs? Yeah, sure. I mean, if we're gonna give away money to companies, I would rather the policy work then if I wanted it to fail in terms of the jobs coming here, I mean, the idea of it's a noble goal. If I wanted it to fail, then I would be advocating for just taking that money and putting it in a big pile and setting it on fire. I mean, if you're going to spend the money, I hope for the best outcome. I hope it's what you say. I hope it's it legitimizes all the positive press when you get to make your announcement about the factory relocating or about the factory that's going to come or revitalize an old factory. But many times you see those headlines, don't you, folks? And you see the credit politicians get. It's going to create 100 new jobs. Where's the follow-up, though? Where's the follow-up? Down at UCA in Conway, the Arkansas Center for Research in Economics, Jacob Bundrick and others, Jeremy Horpendahl, Dr. Horpendahl, they have an amazing research about the success of these projects. And guess what? Their data from 1981 shows, 1981 to like 2013 shows that there isn't any. That it's negligible. In some cases, there's actually a negative economic impact. That's the rare case. But in most cases, there's no verifiable positive economic impact. That means we kind of are just setting our money on fire. That's what it means. Again, it's good to say, noble intentions if you assume that. If you assume that it is noble and it's not just trying to take Arkansas tax dollars and, supporting companies with corporate welfare. And the question would have to be asked, how many of these companies have PACs? I'm just saying, is it possible that some of these companies are expected to tithe a portion of whatever they get to some political action fund somewhere? Is it possible? I mean, has it ever happened before? Of course. I mean, we would be really, really ignorant to assume that it never has. Of course, I mean, of course it happens. And that alone, just the possibility, because you can't track that, and there's, I guess you could argue there's technically nothing illegal about it. Right? I mean, they can take that money and do whatever they want to with it. They want to give it to a PAC? Sure. Any company. Now, so let's just take China out of the equation, right? Let's take China out of the equation. We need to actually explore this, because this isn't really talked about. The number one reason the government should get out of the incentive business, and I know every state does it, right? But the number one reason the government should not be allowed to pick winners and losers is just because of the mere possibility that the corporate welfare, the taxpayer-subsidized corporate welfare, that corporation has a political action committee or knows of political action committees and contributes to political action committees. And that possibility alone, right? You don't even have to have a quid pro quo. You just have to have the possibility of a quid pro quo. That possibility alone should unite liberals, conservatives, progressives, everybody, especially those on the left that are like, oh, campaign finance reform, Why would we not want to have some sort of shut it all down? Just shut it all down. When the government picks winners and losers, it's like, no, but it's the government. Well, no, when you become a government official, you do not become infallible. That's people on the left believe that, by the way, you're a government official. Oh, by the way, I got a feeling we're just at the tip of the iceberg as far as how fallible our government politicians are here in Arkansas, with the FBI running around as much as they've been running around for the last couple of years investigating these people. I'll have more on that here in a minute, by the way. I just have I was going back and reading some comments in a story from a couple of weeks ago that had to do with the newly elected nephew, Senator Jim Hendren, and what he said about what he wants to do as president of the president pro temp of the Senate. Again, the governor's nephew is the president pro temp of the Senate, thereby making the Arkansas Senate a state agency, no longer a legislative body, that one. We've got to take a break. We'll be back. I'll have more on that in just a moment.
If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
In Arkansas, every single hour there is a politician not getting what they want. For some, it's an absolute nightmare. The sleepless nights wondering if progress will ever come. Lying awake pondering how to grow government in this political climate. Asking questions like, why don't my constituents want to pay a few cents more in taxes? Everyday politicians feel abused and neglected. These politicians are starving for power. They're hungry, confused, and they don't understand why no one seems to care. Will you be a patriot and commit today to help these poor, starved for power public officials? It's simple. All you have to do is commit to stay silent and never dissent or stand in the way of your politicians' rise to power. Never speak up or get engaged to stop the growth of government. By committing to these simple steps, you will ensure the life of your politician will be filled with contentment and the respect they are desperately seeking, as well as campaign contributions from lobbyists.
This message brought to you by Aristocrats Serving Arkansas.
PHP Parody. Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right. So, a disagreement. Reggie on Facebook writes, I disagree, Paul. Taxpayer money going to Chinese businesses is hurting local business. I hope ACE's plan fails. Tax dollars should not go to competitors of Arkansas companies. Now, yeah, Reggie, I agree there. What I was just trying to say, yeah, of course you'd hope that the jobs materialize. Otherwise, you're just hoping to throw away money. Nobody wants to throw away taxpayer money, but I would say that's exactly what we're doing. And it does hurt Arkansas companies because you're exactly right, Reggie. You're taking Arkansas taxpayer dollars from existing Arkansas businesses, giving them to companies in China or elsewhere to move here so that that company at a subsidized rate can now hire away existing Arkansas business owners' employees. And that is every bit as much just like what happened with the pharmacy and the PBMs. The local pharmacists were being taken to the woodshed because the government was picking winners and losers, and they were taking your tax dollars, the local pharmacists' tax dollars, and spending it on Arkansas Works Blue Cross Blue Shield insurance policies, and then that money was then going to enrich CVS and go to pay for these sweetheart deals. So the government was an active participant in destroying the businesses of pharmacists, just like when the government gives away taxpayer money, existing Arkansas business money, to recruit companies here. They are actively picking winners and losers and hurting, destroying Arkansas manufacturing, and we have a skilled labor shortage. And again, they act like when they do this economic development, folks, that somebody's just sitting on a couch right now, and when they give all this money away, that person is going to no longer be sitting on the couch. And I would tell you most of the time that's not the case. Most of the time these new jobs, it's just a game of old maid. They're just trading back and forth the old maid. That's all they're doing. And people who already have jobs, who already have the skills, are going to go work at this new company because they make a little bit more money, and the company can afford to do that because it's a subsidy. I don't even know if the Chinese realize what a shortage we have of skilled workforce and labor here in the state. I don't think they understand that, but it's a big deal. Janet on Facebook writes about ASA. I remember back a few years ago, anytime the Conservative Caucus met, a grassroots Tea Party group of different folks from around the state, they met to watchdog the legislature and have lunch in the basement cafe for meetings. Governor Asa Hutchinson would have someone from his office there taking notes, never interacting with us, just listening to what was being said. Yeah, a spy. Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. The governor would always send somebody to take notes on whatever we were discussing, whether it was and eventually we moved from lunch to a committee room, and we were using the microphones and stuff like that. And it was interesting when that would happen, and the governor would send whoever he would send and take notes. I couldn't help but feel a little emboldened, because it's like, well, now that the governor's going to hear exactly what's being said, and we have someone taking notes to report back to the governor, let's just let it all hang out and tell him what we really think. I couldn't resist that. Okay, real quick. Observation needs to be made, right? This headline, back on March the 12th. Joe, Arkansas Democrat Gazette headline, Michael Wickline, back on March the 12th. Arkansas Senate's Jim Hendren focused on ethics, right? Senator Jim Hendren of Sulphur Springs, who is now in line to be the next leader of the Arkansas Senate starting in 2019, says he cares deeply about protecting the integrity of the Senate and the legislature. Okay. What does that mean? Leader nominee aims to keep faith. What does that mean? Folks, I'll tell you what I think it means. I think Senator Hendren, as well as a few others, know just how far the rabbit hole's going to go when it comes to the FBI and what they're going to uncover about what's been going on in our own government. I think he knows how, and I think that's why he's come out saying we're going to protect the integrity of the Senate, because it's not just going to stop with Jake Files, John Woods, or whoever else. Okay, we're going to find out more. It's not going to be good, and when it's all said and done, the reputation of the Arkansas legislature might just hit rock bottom. And historically, that's pretty low if you get below where we've been, history-wise. So just an observation. The focus on ethics by the future president pro temp is, I think, is because he knows just how bad it's going to get. We've got to take a break. We've got one more hour. Don't go anywhere, folks.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
There's meetings taking place, and there's going to be some sort of plan that the governor is. Let me just say this: can you imagine if they came out and the governor was opposed, like legitimately opposed to what they were doing? I don't think that's going to happen, and I think he'd have to be born, yesterday. I mean, it just is what it is. Now, fast forward to today. That was last year. This is this year, and we now know that military retirement tax cut was actually a tax increase, because while they did give our brave men and women who have served long enough to retire in the military a tax break on their income taxes here in Arkansas, they raised taxes on digital downloads, they raised taxes on candy and soda, and when it's all said and done, the government actually got more money at the end of the day than they did before. It didn't actually offset. It wasn't even an offset. It wasn't neutral. They ended up getting more money. And Senator Hendren says, no, we didn't get more money. We took that extra $8 million and we transferred it into a Medicaid trust fund, as if because they got the money and immediately spent it or shifted it somewhere else. It's not a tax increase. It's very strange, but it just shows you how defensive they are. And by the way, that data comes from the Bureau of Legislative Research. And I know you want to twist. In committee, they like to, especially after this program airs, they like to go to committee, and then they like to twist Department of Finance and administration officials' arms to get them to just publicly agree with them. There are more people that listen to this radio program, though, than are in their little committee room, even if it is in the MAC building with no cameras, so nobody can know what's going on. People want to do your business in secret. All right. Goes on. The governor, Asa Hutchinson, has already proposed an income tax cut approximately of $180 million. The task force's recommendations may ask for more, less, or modify, but rest assured there will be no proposals for net tax increases. Well, of course, neither was the military retirement tax. That wasn't a proposal for a net tax increase. You guys were claiming it was revenue neutral. I'm not suggesting. Okay, I'm sorry. Let me clarify, Jim. I'm not suggesting that your actual proposal will be so overt that you claim we need more money and we're going to score it and we're going to show that the government is going to get more money after this is all said and done. I'm not claiming that you're going to be that transparent. I'm claiming that at the end of the day, when the bill's passed, I just have a feeling that the government is going to end up bigger than when this whole process started. And by bigger, I mean getting more money from the people on a yearly basis. That's all I'm trying to say. And this is what happens when you get into the whole revenue neutral mindset, when it's a tax shift instead of an actual tax cut, because you're putting your elbows out and you're protecting the nest egg of the government at all costs. And I'm just saying, in order to do this right, you have to be willing to allow the government to have less money. And in order to give that money back to the people, you have to find places to cut. And right now, your philosophy is completely different. And look, I'm not coming out against eliminating exemptions. That's called broadening the base, right? Lowering rates and broadening the base. I get that. I'm not coming out necessarily against that. I think that but I'm saying when your mentality is we have to make sure we are taxing the people at a maximum rate or a maximum amount of things, it's a different mentality than saying, what is the minimum amount of money the government needs to function? That should be your mentality. And you could, if that's your mentality, if that's your base goal, of course you can broaden the base. But you should be trying to find a number, and that number should be what is the minimum amount of money it takes to run the government. And that conversation is one that would upset John Brummett, Max Brantley, and everyone else who gets money from and everyone else who likes to, let me just say, who enjoys a big government from a philosophical point of view. That would actually upset them. You might actually have some negative articles coming from John Brumman instead of the ones praising Asa Hutchinson as a.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Yes, Conduit News Radio, the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. I'm Paul, and give us a phone call or a text message, 870-275-9799. Also, and if you send us a text, give us your name and county, if you don't mind. We'd appreciate that. Facebook.com/Conduit News. You can watch us do the program if you'd like, and you can participate in the conversation there. That's Facebook.com/Conduit News. All right. What do we want to start here at the top of this hour? Oh, first of all, at the bottom of the hour, I want to talk about this Michael Wickline piece where he interviewed Jan Morgan yesterday. And it's a pretty fascinating piece on, well, I'm just going to save it because it's really good. And the governor walked in while she was being interviewed, and it went from there. And it's it's the kind of stuff. It's the kind of event that you had to report when you saw it. It really it really truly is. All right, so let's do this real quick. Let's talk about Conduit for Commerce for a second, because that's one of the reasons you're hearing the show. This particular part of the show is the Conduit for Commerce policy segment. So you can go to conduitforcommerce.org and check out everything that they have there about putting Arkansas small business first. Conduit for Commerce, okay, is doing the job that, in terms of small business, that the Chamber of Commerce used to do. It's conduitforcommerce.org, so check it out. Specifically, this particular policy segment, we need to talk about what's going on in Northwest Arkansas. Tom Sissom has a headline about last night there was a quorum court meeting, the second reading in Bentonville of a proposed plan to take up a $400 million bond issue for Simmons Foods. Now, this would be an ordinance that would authorize the industrial revenue bond. And again, second reading, it happened last night. I don't have any reports on that yet, but it has to do with Simmons Foods. They want to build, and we just got through talking about this last hour, but Simmons Foods plans to build a 400,000 square foot poultry processing facility at 9802 Arkansas 59 South, according to information submitted to Benton County. The building site would take about 100 acres. Joe, I think we've got this piece here on the Simmons Foods. The quorum court did the first of 3 required readings of the ordinance authorizing the bonds Thursday. The county will hold a public hearing before the second reading. The third and final reading is set for April 26th. All right, so let's stop there for a second. So let's talk about what let's talk about what these bonds are, okay? So what you have to understand is when you're talking about a $400 million bond issue, now, again, this is the government getting involved. This is the government picking winners and losers. Now, we were just talking about this. And what you have to understand as far as the $400 million bond issue is this is debt. People don't like to, well, people in the establishment, they don't like to talk about that because they know that you believe that debt is wrong. But that's fundamentally what this is. But what doesn't get talked about enough is the fact that when I see a bond issue, when I see that the state is willing to do this for a private company, what I see are future tax increases. What I think of is the fact that in the 1930s, Arkansas went bankrupt because of situations such as this, because you never know about economic downturns. And when the state gets into trouble, or when they need more money because they have made bad investments and they have gambled wrong, and that's what this is, make no mistake about it, it is a gamble. When they do these things, they always come back to you, the taxpayer, if things don't work out the way they hoped. This is about leverage, and it's about over-leveraging yourself. And yourself in this, context is the state, but we are the state. At least the state thinks of us that way. So that's the first thing. I mean, these things are fundamentally flawed in so many ways, so many areas. And by the way, this is if you notice the headline, Quorum Court to take again take up bond issue. I mean, I wonder how long it's been in the works, and I'm curious: have they tried to do this in the past, or is this just a new thing? Because if they were reporting on the third reading or the second reading, so that's not necessarily the case. But now, here's the other thing. So that's the first issue. You got to understand these bond issues are not good for the taxpayer. They're just not good. That's the first point. The second point is, it appears, according to this article, the people up there in Benton County don't even want this thing, or at least the residents who live around where the proposed site's going to be. But let's talk about incentives for a second. David Jackson, who's the president of Simmons, president and chief operating officer for Prepared Foods, has said the company needs to move from its location in downtown Decatur because space is limited, and the company wants to expand the operation. Jackson said the company has about 700 employees at the Decatur location and will have about 900 at the new location when it opens. Over a period of 3 to 4 years, the company plans to expand up to 2,300 employees. Okay, so at some point in the next 10 years, they'll get around to it. See, this is always how these pieces go. The predictions always read just like that. In 3 to 4 years, we'll be, That's how it always is. The Simmons plant would operate 24 hours a day, Sunday through Friday. Let's see here. Let's talk about incentives, though. The Benton County Judge, Barry Moring, said the Simmons Foods plant in Decatur generates about $154,000 in property taxes. Under the payment in lieu of tax program, the company would pay $1 million annually as a payment in lieu of taxes, increasing the property tax revenue by about $937,717. The amount is less than the company would pay in assessed property taxes at the new site. So they're getting a tax break. They're saying, we'll pay you $1 million in property taxes, but we would owe more if we actually did this the right way. So on top of the taxpayer debt, Moring said the 870-acre parcel of land near Gentry, where the company is building the new plant, currently generates about $2,400 in property taxes. Obviously, once you build a factory there, that wouldn't be the case. But then it says that residents don't like this new facility idea. They said that more than 50 people attended a December 6th planning board meeting with people sitting in the aisles and standing in the doorway throughout the public hearing about the Simmons plant proposal. Residents voiced concerns about increased traffic, adverse effect on property value, possible groundwater contamination, and the potential leaks of hazardous chemical used in the facility. Now, see, I'm not so much as if you want to buy some property, you want to play by the rules, you want to pay, go for it. You know? Go do what you need to do. As a private company, do it. Provide the service or the product that you want to, sell it for a profit, make as much money as you want. That's free market capitalism. Go for it. I'm just sick and tired of the government getting involved and having to do this or that. Frustrating. At least we have Jim Getling, who's a nearby resident. He's quoted as saying, the Planning Commission opened up a can of worms when they allowed this to move into a residential area. Then we have Teresa Lowry of Gentry saying, I think they did not consider the thoughts and feelings of the people in the area. They just steamrolled over the top of us. Well, that's what that tends to be what government does when there's a consensus everywhere else. I saw a post the other day about how grateful we are that we live in a republic and not a democracy. I can't remember where I saw it. But you know why? You know why that post was made? Is because of those anti-Second Amendment gun grabbers. And can you imagine with mob rule what would happen right now if we lived in an actual democracy and not a republic that protects and puts limits on the government to protect the people, and one of those is the Second Amendment? They would have all, if they say democracy is two wolves and a sheep deciding what's for dinner. Yeah. But you got in some cases, though, you have, you are going to get steamrolled. And again, if somebody wants to buy some property, they want to build something there, do it. But do it at your own cost. Why do we have to involve the taxpayers in everything? And why is the left not more up in arms about this? It's the left that always screams about corporate welfare and like oil companies, but they don't care about corporate welfare and the government getting involved with other big businesses. It doesn't make any sense to me. I just don't understand why there's such an inconsistency there. It's like they just use it for fake outrage when it suits them, but they're not being consistent in their principles. That's why I don't understand how leftists or Democrats in this state can get upset about that. All right, we're going to take a break. You can call us or text us, 870-275-9799, and sound off again, facebook.com/Conduit News. Coming up at 7:33, we're going to get to this headline where Jan Morgan, the headline here, Michael Wickline, axes Arkansas's Medicaid expansion. Governor hopeful says. It's an entire story about Jan Morgan. Of course, they get into a tit for tat with the governor's campaign spokesperson, Jamie Barker. We're going to go over this story coming up at 7:33. Don't go anywhere. Back in just a moment.
This is Mother Government. I come to the people of Arkansas with an important announcement. In disloyal circles, some are questioning the scope and size of government, and telling the people government programs should not waste the labors of the people under the guise of taking care of them. This is a thought I must correct. People of Arkansas, you should not believe everything you hear unless it comes from a government source. Let me, Mother Government, set the record straight. You know you can trust me. After all, would your own mother lie to you? You should know the brand new, terrific program known as Arkansas Works has nothing to do with the old, bad program known as the Obamacare private option. Arkansas Works is good. People who say otherwise are bad and are seeking to undermine my collective vision for progress. If these groups continue in their criticism, then you should question their party loyalty. Tell them to quit focusing on this single issue. And then remind them Mother Government says the future of Arkansas depends on this single issue. In my next address, I will discuss the need to prepare your fellow citizens for the next round of revenue gathering that will be needed to continue funding my motherly goals. This message was brought to you by our partner, Aristocrats, serving Arkansas. Thank you for listening, and remember, from cradle to grave.
PHP Parody. Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Janet on Facebook writing, wow, Northwest Arkansas has second readings, usually in Conway. They waive all readings and declare an emergency. Wow. See, our mayor, Bart Castleberry, promised they would not do this when he was campaigning, but ... So that's some reactions about our story we were just covering, or the story in the Gazette we were covering. We have Glenn on Facebook writing, the folks in North Arkansas's 5-county area are experiencing the same thing. An $18 fee assessed on all owners pay for junk bonds on solid waste landfill. So that's interesting. Then we have Gene talking about what's going on over in Van Buren in the western part of the state. Allen Canning Company was a great company in Van Buren. They're closed. Recently, Tyson announced layoffs of about 150 in Van Buren. Until Arkansas taxes and regulations become competitive, he writes, should taxpayers risk tax dollars on new business ventures? Excellent points there. People listening in North Arkansas, people listening out of Conway as well as western Arkansas. Yeah, a lot of responses there. We appreciate you guys out there listening. For sure we do. So hang on a second. Virtually everything being put out by this state is false information. I got another comment there. It kind of feels like it, right? A lot of this stuff that you hear, especially now that we're in campaign season, it just feels like propaganda. And we're going to read some of that. We're going to... Okay, Joe, explore this. You were saying this last hour, but you weren't saying it on the air. You were saying it just to me. So, what are you saying again?
So if you were listening last hour, I made a statement, when does the king consider the common folk? Well, I also said off of air, when does the hawk consider the mouse? When need be.
Yeah.
And when is need be? When it's hungry.
That's a really good point.
And then I related it to Governor Asa Hutchinson. When does the governor consider the common folk? When need be. When is need be? Campaign season.
Yeah, right now. And, you've even got John Brummett, who's just, I feel like, kind of amazed. I was listening to him on Roby Brock's Talk Business and Politics. Well, I mean, John was just. I feel like even Brummett was amazed how far Asa is trying to paint himself, like how right he's trying to appear. And, of course, John Brummett doesn't care because John Brummett basically agrees with Asa's governing style. He's written many articles about that. I mean, and so it's not really a criticism as much as it's just an observation from him because, I mean, I can tell you one thing. John Brummett is going to be probably voting for Asa in a Republican primary over Jan Morgan. I feel like that's a safe bet.
When you said that he was surprised at how Ace is trying to paint himself, my first thought, and this was, I don't know why this popped into my head, but it's just a random animated cartoon that that I've created in my own head. Asa is at his desk. He looks at his watch and goes, "Oh, I got it. It's election time." He walks out the door and he slides down the staircase right there, but it's a slip and slide style and it's all red paint. And then he jumps up at the end and stands there and gives some sort of speech, but he's trying to paint himself as a Republican.
That is an interesting mind you have.
I don't know why that's what immediately appeared into my head.
That is an interesting mind. Sounds like fun, though. Wouldn't you love to give a speech that way? Like, I got to give a speech, and you get to go down a big slide first, and then you just hop up on your feet and all right, hey, folks, how's it going?
Yeah, but could you imagine that little animated like political animated cartoon?
Yeah, that's true. Got to paint yourself red first.
Yep. Before you get into a speech.
Yep. Yeah, and they really do think it's red T-shirt, blue T-shirt stuff. That's the game they think they're playing. When in reality, there's a lot of the blue T-shirts that are really happy with with the red T-shirt governor right now, and the policies. And we talked about that. If you missed the first hour, you need to go back and listen to the first. I think that's what we talked about at the very beginning. I know the podcast is entitled "Arkansas's Chinese Economic Development Plan," but the first, I guess, 10, 15 minutes was actually about this very topic. Let's see, Wayne Beach on Facebook writing, "Can't stop laughing about Ace's encounter with Jan yesterday. I guess that I would run too if my pants had suddenly caught fire too." This article in the Democrat Gazette by Michael Wickline is pretty fantastic about Jan Morgan and a little encounter. And again, I'm gonna save it until 7:33 though. I'm gonna wait a little while before we get there. I want to remind you guys to go to conduitforaction.org. Okay, I'm gonna go there right now. And what you need to do is you need to sign up for their newsletter. I know, Joe. I know, but here's the thing, right? When like, for example, okay, right now at conduitforaction.org, there's a brand new article out today. The headline is, "Reducing Number of State Agencies is Not About Reducing Government." This is in reaction to what the governor said last week. But you see, sometimes people forget to go to a website every single day. Now, I don't because I, make the rounds, but if you don't want to have to remember, but you do check your email every day, and most people do, it's on your phone, a lot of you guys, just go to conduitforaction.org right now and subscribe to receive new posts. It's right there. You just put your email address in, and you hit subscribe, and then every time there's an update on the website, a new article, you're going to get that new article. So it's conduitforaction.org. I'm actually going to click on this new article right now because I haven't even read it. Reducing number of state agencies is not about reducing government. Now, this is a piece. Go there now. This is a piece by David Ferguson. Pretty interesting stuff here. Yeah, it's a lengthy article. Go there right now. New article up right now, conduitforaction.org. Folks, we got to take a break. Don't go anywhere. Back in just a moment. pragmatic conservative or, mainstream conservative. Mainstream conservative that has increased spending $600 million. His sixth tweet of 7, Senator Jim Hendren. Unfortunately, some will probably attempt to distort the task force's duty to review exemptions in an effort to protect their own carve-outs. Nevertheless, we will do our job and thoroughly review the Arkansas tax code from top to bottom. Again, I'm just sitting here hoping that you guys are right. I'm hoping you're right. I just don't know if we agree on the definition of what conservative is. I don't think we disagree. I don't think we agree on the definition of words. Tax cut. Anyway, I laid out those definitions. Maybe we do. Maybe we do. But we will wait and see on this. Let me just end with this. Say, Paul, why are you so skeptical of the task force? Why do you think it may end up with giving more money to the government than the government has now? Well, because of this. Speaker of the House Jeremy Gillum, on the very first day that the task force met, you had Jim Hendren there, and you had I can't remember the House guy who's head of it. Is it Lane Jean? So you got Lane Jean, you got Jim Hendren, but you got Jeremy Gillum, the Speaker of the House, and he basically starts the meeting and brings everybody together, and he says a few words. Now this is kind of bad audio, but I think if you listen. This is what Speaker of the House Jeremy Gillum said the very first meeting of the Tax Reform Task Force. Listen.
It's going to be, I think, a very robust debate that will take place over the next year and a half as to our tax policy here in Arkansas. And I know a lot that has been kind of written about kind of the mandate, so to speak, and it seems to always be mentioned that it's about which tax cuts are going to be put forth in the next General Assembly, and I think you are all familiar with the fact that that is not necessarily the overriding mandate of this task force, but it's to look at reform and relief and making Arkansas competitive in our surrounding areas to make sure that we have a viable tax policy. So
okay, stop. That was so strange when he said that. I don't know if you heard that. He said everybody's been writing about the tax cuts that we're going to recommend to the next General Assembly. That is not necessarily what this task force is for. Well, then what is it for then? I mean, maybe he just misspoke. I'm not sure, but that.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, Michael Wickline. Headline here, axes Arkansas's Medicaid expansion. Governor Hopeful says this is a piece about Michael Wickline writing this piece, and this is about Jan Morgan. Arkansas's version of Medicaid expansion, which provides health insurance to about 285,000 low-income Arkansans, is socialized medicine, and the state would have been better off without it, Republican gubernatorial candidate Jan Morgan said in an interview Monday. That's the opening paragraph. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. I wonder if the Hutchinson campaign will directly defend and say that it's not socialized medicine. And how in the world would they be able to do that with a straight face? I mean, I know they would, but how would they, I mean, it's a new population that, I mean, we are now operating in Arkansas under the assumption that health care is a right for everybody, that we are born enslaved to one another's health care costs. It's extremely offensive. But scrolling down in this article, Michael Wickline writes, Morgan, who is challenging Hutchinson in the May 22nd Republican primary, was interviewed for an hour by the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette at the Capitol Bistro, just east of the state capitol. During the interview, the governor dropped by to pick up an order.
Wait, the governor goes and gets his own food?
Yes, the governor does go and get his own food on days that Jan Morgan is being interviewed by the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. He goes and gets his own food. Only on those days, though. Got So the governor drops by, and boy, wouldn't you have loved to have been there? Man, that had to be a little awkward, right? What are you doing here? I think you probably knew. Michael Wickline then goes on to write, he and Morgan acknowledged each other as he left, and she told him, "Hi, Governor. Look forward to that debate." Michael Wickline writes, but no debate is scheduled. Again, Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, sometimes you have to report that, right? I wonder what the people of Arkansas think when they read this. Looking forward to that debate, Asa Hutchinson says, basically, no debate is happening. No debate is happening. Now, Joe, I understand that you say that you were listening to, Jan was on the Dave Ellswick show yesterday, and you were listening, and you said that Jan was saying that now they're kind of pivoting, saying that they're trying to get something scheduled.
Yeah, when I was listening to the show yesterday, Jan was saying that the governor's story has changed, that they're trying to schedule a debate, but no one has reached out to Jan or her campaign.
Yeah, they
to
haven't
actually have the debate.
So now they're just saying that we're going to try to schedule it, but they're not actually negotiating or talking with each other about how they want to do it.
No, Asa will just go up there and debate himself.
Man,
and promptly agree with himself regularly.
Yeah, but isn't that interesting? Because Jan is so well spoken, and so articulate, and compared to Jan, Asa is not. I'm not saying Asa is a bad public speaker. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, the two of them, there would be such a contrast. Do what?
I think Jan's better off the cuff.
Yeah,
definitely.
exactly.
Because whenever we were listening to the interview that Asa had on Dave Ellswick's show, Asa just always seemed really like he had to really think about his answer way before, and Jan just knows her stuff.
Yeah.
Like she knows where she stands. She knows all of what she stands for. The entire party platform, what she what she's running for, and who she's running for.
Yeah.
And she can just answer. She's a very well-spoken individual.
Yeah, I know, and I think people want that level of competency, of being able to speak off the cuff, because it's just more genuine, it's more real. If it's less scripted, and look, I know Asa can speak off the cuff as well, but I feel like when he speaks off the cuff, he ends up complaining that Conduit News Radio is on several stations across the state, and they're a media machine, when he can go on MSNBC and say whatever he wants, and has many times. All right, so keep going here. No debate is scheduled. Hutchinson campaign spokesman Jamie Barker said later that, quote, a debate should not even be considered so long as Mrs. Morgan refuses to support the Republican nominee. Now, this is referencing a month ago when Morgan said that if she loses, she will not endorse Asa. And she said that with good reason, because she said if there was a conservative in the race, I wouldn't be running for governor. And so this has got everybody, everybody saw, I can't believe you wouldn't support the nominee. Well, I'm sorry, right now, the Republican Party is fractured. And it really is. And the governor does not care about limited government conservatism unless it is an election year. And now he's trying to paint. He's now trying to paint himself as as really conservative. He had that whole thing. If you listen to the governor, On Twitter, he's running an ad and Facebook talking about how he's standing up against the Obama administration for their bathroom bill or their bathroom regulations when he fought tooth and nail against them, against a bathroom bill this last session or a year ago or whatever. It's crazy. So what else we have? So then he goes on and Tracy Horn countered Barker, quote, "What does not endorsing Asa have to do with having a debate or not?" So what we have here is a statewide newspaper revealing to the people. Now, everybody who listens to this program, everybody, you guys know that Asa doesn't want to debate Jan. But now the entire state knows. Everybody who's reading this article, you don't have to get very far in until Asa just strolls into the Capitol Bistro. And Jan says, "Ready for that debate anytime, Governor." And then there is no debate. And now it is being reported that there is no debate. No debate is scheduled. So that's pretty fantastic. Candidates also have different opinions on Arkansas Works. So let's get to this real quick. Morgan's campaign website states that she opposes Arkansas's version of Medicaid expansion that is now called Arkansas Works, according to Michael Wickline. Hang on, can we back up for a second? On this not debating, isn't that, it's just ridiculous, right? Why wouldn't you want to debate? If you're a politician, why wouldn't you want to debate? Why would you be afraid of the other person's arguments? Is Asa afraid to debate? Yeah, absolutely. It is 100%. He is afraid to debate. He thinks it's going to cost him more than it will help him. He's afraid to debate. He's afraid to debate. It goes on about back to this article on the Medicaid expansion. The program has created divisions within the state Republican Party. Talking about Arkansas Works made it difficult virtually every year since 2013 for supporters to get the required 3/4 vote in the state House. Asked how she would end the Medicaid program because she thinks it should go away. She writes this, again in the statewide newspaper, or she says this: "We could have ended it had our legislators not voted to fund it again, and I expected our Republicans to do that. They did not. They should have. A number of those guys and gals ran on the promise that they would never expand Medicaid to begin with. If Hutchinson, listen to this. This is fantastic. If Hutchinson would have just left our Republican lawmakers alone and let them represent the will of the people who elected them, we wouldn't have had Medicaid expansion. We wouldn't have Arkansas Works." Wow. If elected, Governor Morgan said, "What I'm going to do is get out of the way of legislators who are representing the people, and the legislators will decide what to do with the people on Arkansas Works." Wow, that's great. And then she says, "We would have been better off with just Medicaid." Meaning like just the regular, traditional, we would have been better off with it at this point because it's cheaper. It's just unbelievably cheaper when you look at $570 a month versus, the $300, and you only pay that if people go to the doctor. All right, anyway. So it goes on. So eventually they start to ask, so they do the interview with Hutchinson. They do the interview with Jan Morgan, and then they go back and they ask Jamie Barker, that's Asa Hutchinson's campaign spokesman.
Can I say something real quick?
Yes.
I love how Asa won't even debate Jan in an article. He has to have a spokesperson do so.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. So we would have been better off with just so Barker, Hutchinson's campaign spokesman, said later that the governor inherited the private option. By working with the legislature, this is the Asa campaign, and the Trump administration, conservative reforms like the recently announced work requirement continue to improve the program, he said. Goes on, Hutchinson's efforts. He writes, "There are fewer people on Medicaid today than when the governor took office, thanks to a growing economy and the reforms made through Arkansas Works. Now, doesn't he mention rural hospitals? When does he do? When does he mention hospitals? Hang on one second. I'm going to find it. Yeah, here we go. So when the private option was adopted under the previous administration, funding for UAMS was cut by tens of millions of dollars. If you ended the program, you start by having to restore this funding. We also know that our rural hospitals would suffer loss as well. So this is Jamie Barker, the governor's campaign spokesperson, parroting Hillary Clinton talking points. Joe, cue the video. This is Hillary Clinton in 2015. She stops by Arkansas, and she says that you'll have to go to the 2350 mark of that video. Yeah, cue this up. I just want you to understand something here. This is the kind of stuff that you cannot escape from. This is just Hillary Clinton, in her own words, praising Asa Hutchinson and Mike Beebe, and you're using the same talking points that the Democrats use about rural hospitals and their phony hospital math, where they show a much greater loss than they actually incur. Listen.
I'm proud of Arkansas. I'm really proud of Arkansas because both Mike Beebe, the prior Democratic governor, now Asa Hutchinson, the current Republican governor, have been among the most creative leaders in the country to figure out how to expand Medicaid in Arkansas, to take care of, more than 100,000 people last time I checked. And you know what that's meant?
Yeah, it was like
that's meant not only that people got health care, it's also meant that rural hospitals have stayed open that are closing in states that refuse to extend Medicaid. And I know it's a favorite issue on the Republican right, and I know how hard it is to try to do something as important as extending Medicaid, but I'm proud of Arkansas, and I go around bragging on this state because this was bipartisan. The Republican legislature had to approve it, and I am really supportive of what Governor Hutchinson is trying to do to make sure it stays here in Arkansas to take care of people and provide health care.
Stop. So it is what it is. I mean, this is the same. You have Hillary Clinton talking points. You have a supposed conservative or somebody trying to run as a conservative, parroting that to defend the program. And, that is, the truth is out there for people who want to see it, And I'll tell you this. The fact that Jan Morgan is running in the first place is a victory for every limited government conservative across this state, because it is actually making Asa pay attention to those of us who believe in smaller government, which is actually a lot of people if you go issue by issue. Okay? If Asa didn't have a Republican primary opponent, he would not be running ads right now claiming that he was some champion against LGBT bathroom rights. And that's what he's doing right now, okay? He wouldn't be running that ad. If Jan Morgan wasn't running for governor in a Republican primary, Asa Hutchinson would not have come out and claimed, and falsely defined, but claimed that Arkansas is a constitutional carry state, which we are, but his definition of a constitutional carry still protects the Arkansas State Police budget. Of course, now he's coming out and saying, on the radio, he came out and said, well, if the Arkansas State Police budget takes a hit, we'll just find a way to absorb that. That is pure campaign rhetoric. He doesn't believe that statement at all. And none of that would be happening if Jan Morgan wasn't running for governor. And so that in and of itself is a huge victory that he feels the need. What does that say about the base here? I think it says that it is that we have a Republican Party that is much more conservative, down to the county committees, the people who are the grassroots, the door knockers, much more conservative than how we are being represented. And, I mean, even establishment Republicans know that. Establishment Republicans down at the Marble Palace, you guys know that the people back home are more conservative than the special interests that you try to balance. That's what you guys are trying to do. It's a balancing game. You try to balance the needs of the special interests at the Marble Palace with the needs of your district. And that's what's going on right now. And the needs of your district are the people who are saying, we want you to be a conservative, and you get down there and the special interests say, well, we're going to need you to do this. And you try to balance that, and you try to take your little carefully crafted language and present that back to your district as victories for things that you've done, and you ignore the other stuff that you've done that is growing the size of government, and everything else. And that's a huge problem right now. We are not being represented adequately. And the fact that the governor is pivoting so far to the right and is acting like it's not even him with the carefully crafted language and how he's characterizing his own record and what he's done. Okay, I thought that's all that was going to be, but no, he's actually coming out and he's claiming that he's some go look at the ad. He's talking about how I was the first to stand up to Obama when he came down with his bathroom recommendations for schools or for publicly funded schools. And, folks, Asa Hutchinson, all he did was say, it's just a recommendation. That's all his letter did. He put out a statement saying, we don't have to do any of this. It's just a recommendation. And I said at the time, well, we certainly know what you would be doing if it wasn't a recommendation, if it was a mandate. If it was a mandate, guess what? We would be adopting it because that's exactly what we always do. We just got we got the political equivalency of Stockholm syndrome when it comes to following federal mandates, whether it's Obamacare or whatever else they want to force us to do with their social engineering schemes. Anyway, this is a pretty fantastic article just in terms of getting the word out that the governor does have a primary opponent, number one, and number two, will not debate. Now, the analysis that you just heard about this Hillary Clinton quotes, you're not going to hear that too many other places. But, I mean, you can see that the governor's response to ending the program is to say, basically parrot Hillary Clinton campaign talking points back when she was running in a primary against Bernie Sanders. I mean, think about that. How do you escape that? I'm proud of Arkansas. I'm proud of Governor Asa Hutchinson. I support Governor Asa Hutchinson for what he did with Medicaid. I mean, good grief. It's wild. It's very inconvenient that she said that. Very inconvenient that she said that, don't you think? We got to take a break. Don't go anywhere. This is Conduit News Radio. I'm Paul Harrell. Back in a moment.
Protecting your business means protecting your data. But is your business really prepared to handle the growing threat of things like cybercriminals and ransomware? At iTex, they're committed to deploying the best security solutions to protect your business and your bottom line. Security threats are constantly evolving. So are security needs. Be proactive now and equip your business with the best cybersecurity available with iTex. Call them today for a free consultation at 870-336-9778. That's 870-336-9778 or itexusa.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, welcome back. Thanks so much for being with us. Oh man, what a great show today. I've had a good time, folks. Let's see here. What do we have? Do we have some comments? Yeah, we've got a lot of people on Facebook who are commenting here. Hang on a second. Great morning program. Pamela writes, what an awesome article in the state newspaper. Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty, I just feel like the fact that it got reported so early on in the article too, that there's no debate scheduled, it's going to have people kind of questioning what's going on. So maybe there is a debate. I don't know. Maybe there will be one at some point. The question is, what kind of debate do you want to have? Do you want to have a debate where people from Arkansas business are there trying to moderate? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I've watched some of these debates in the past, and they don't really ever bring up questions that the people of Arkansas want to hear about. Specifically, in a Republican primary. In a Republican primary, how would you do a debate? And look, for example, Gwen Moritz, Arkansas business. She would have no business being a moderator for a Republican debate. So who would it be?
What if they asked you to?
Well, that would never happen either, and maybe it shouldn't. I guess, unless you wanted to go with, I guess I could moderate it if, there would have to be other people. You know what I'm saying? Like, you'd have to make sure that you would have both sides of the Republican Party represented right now. But even to do that is something the establishment doesn't want to do, and that's to acknowledge that there is a divide. And they certainly don't want to acknowledge that they don't want to acknowledge the legitimacy of the right, of the legitimate limited government right. They don't even want to. They want to think that they themselves are conservatives. So yeah, I don't think Asa would ever agree to have me moderate a debate or even be anywhere asking a question, and that's fine. I wouldn't expect him to. But my point is like, if you did have a debate, would it just need to be Lincoln Douglas style, where each candidate gets a certain amount of time and you just get to talk? And in a Lincoln Douglas style debate, essentially that's going to be more of slams on each other. Right? And Asa wouldn't fare well in a Lincoln Douglas debate because, he would have to, she would bring up his record, he would respond to it. And it would be, it's way more argumentative, but you would get to the bottom of what the issues are, I think. But anyway, it certainly would be good. Boy, it'd be like popcorn material. Grab your popcorn. But I have no idea. I don't even know how. According to what she was saying, there are no negotiations. As of now, there isn't going to be a debate. So, anyway. Folks, that's all the time we have for today. Go to conduitnews.com. Get the show in all of its different formats. Subscribe to YouTube, our YouTube channel, Conduit News. Back in a moment.